There's a war outside my window. I eat stray bullets for breakfast, and I wonder to myself who's supposed to protect us. There's a war outside my window. And I want to fight it. It's so hard to hide it, so I just scroll past. Pray to God it don't last. There's a war outside my window. And I'm scared that they'll take my daddy, my uncle, my brother too, because they look like me and not like you. There's a war outside my window, and the troops are moving in, greeted by blue and red lights, serenaded to sleep by sirens. There's a war outside my window, and they say I'm here to serve and protect while stepping on my neck. There's a war outside my window, and GPA and honor roll don't matter. Just raise your hands to the sky. Thinking about all the family I would leave behind, finger on the trigger, but I refuse to cry, because to them I'm just a nigger, and for that I deserve to die. There's a war outside my window.
I didn't want to come, and I don't want to be here. I'm the son of an Atlanta City police officer. My cousin is an Atlanta City police officer, and my other cousin, East Point police officer. And I got a lot of love and respect for police officers, down to the original 8 police officers in Atlanta that even after becoming police had to dress in a YMCA because white officers didn't want to get dressed with niggers. And here we are 80 years later. I watched a white officer assassinate a black man. And I know that tore your heart out. And I know it's crippling. And I have nothing positive to say in this moment, because I don't want to be here. But I'm responsible to be here because it wasn't just Dr. King and people dressed nicely who marched and protested to progress this city and so many other cities. It was people like my grandmother, people like my aunts and uncles who were members of SCLC and NAACP, and in particular, Reverend James Orange, Mrs. Alice Johnson, and Reverend Love, who we just lost last year. So I'm duty bound to be here to simply say that it is your duty not to burn your own house down for anger with an enemy. It is your duty to fortify your own house so that you may be a house of refuge in times of organization. And now is the time to plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. It is time to beat up prosecutors you don't like at the voting booth. It is time to hold mayoral offices accountable, chiefs and deputy chiefs. Atlanta is not perfect, but we're a lot better than we ever were, and we're a lot better than cities are. I'm mad as hell. I woke up wanting to see the world burn down yesterday because I'm tired of seeing black men die. He casually put his knee on a human being's neck for 9 minutes as he died like a zebra in the clutch of a lion's jaw. And we watch it like murder porn over and over again. So that's why children are burning to the ground. They don't know what else to do. And it is the responsibility of us to make this better right now. We don't want to see one officer charged. We want to see 4 officers prosecuted and sentenced. We don't want to see targets burning. We want to see the system that sets up for systemic racism burnt to the ground. And as I sit here in Georgia, home of Stevens, Georgia, former vice president of the Confederacy, white man said that law, fundamental law, stated that whites were naturally the superior race, and the Confederacy was built on a cornerstone. It's called a cornerstone speech. Look it up. The cornerstone speech that blacks would always be subordinate. That officer believed that speech because he killed that man like an animal. In this city, officers have done horrendous things and they have been prosecuted. This city's cut different. In this city, you can find over 50 restaurants owned by black women. I didn't say minority, and I didn't say women of color. So after you burn down your own home, what do you have left but char and ash? CNN? Ted did a great thing. I love CNN, I love Cartoon Network, but I'd like to say to CNN right now, karma's a mother. Stop feeding fear and anger every day. Stop making people feel so fearful. Give them hope. I'm glad they only took down a sign and defaced a building and they're not killing human beings like that policeman did. I'm glad that they only destroyed some brick and mortar and they didn't rip a father from a son. They didn't rip a son from a mother like the policeman did. When a man yells for his mother in duress and pain and she's dead, he is essentially yelling, please, God, don't let it happen to me. And we watch that. So my question for us on the other side of this camera is, after it burns, will we be left with charred, or will we rise like a phoenix out of the ashes that Atlanta has always done? Will we use this as a moment to say that we will not do what other cities have done, and in fact, we will get better than we've been? We got good enough to destroy cash bonds. You don't have to worry about going to jail for something petty. We got smart enough to decriminalize marijuana. How smart are we going to be in the next 15 or 20 years to keep us ahead of this curve? So that much like when South Africa suffered apartheid, you had Andy and other politicians that could make sure that Atlanta said, Coca-Cola, we love you, but if you don't pull out of South Africa, we're going to leave. We're not going to drink Coca-Cola anymore. Coca-Cola jumped on their side and apartheid ended. So we have an opportunity now. Because I'm mad, I don't have any good advice. But what I can tell you is that if you sit in your homes tonight, instead of burning your home to the ground, you will have time to properly plot, plan, strategize, and organize and mobilize in an effective way. And two of the most effective ways is first taking your butt to the computer and making sure you fill out your census so that people know who you are and where you are. The next thing is making sure you exercise your political bully power and going to local elections and beating up the politicians that you don't like. You got a prosecutor sent your partner to jail and you know it was bullshit, put a new prosecutor in there. Now's your election to do it. You want a different senator that's more progressive, that promotes marijuana through, now is the time to do that. But it is not time to burn down your own home. I love and I respect you. I hate I don't have more to say. I hate I can't fix it in a snap. I hate Atlanta's not perfect for as good as we are. But we have to be better than this moment. We have to be better than burning down our own homes. Because if we lose Atlanta, what else we got? We lose an ability to plot, to plan, to strategize, to organize, and to properly mobilize. I want you to go home. I want you to talk to 10 of your friends. I want you guys to come up with real solutions. I would like for the Atlanta City Police Department to bring back the Community Review Board, one that Alice Johnson was formerly under Chief Turner. We need a review board here because we need to get ahead of it before an officer does some stupid shit. We need to get ahead of it. That's my recommendation to my mayor and my chief. Let's get a review board. Let's get ahead of it, and let's give them power. We don't need an officer that makes a mistake once, twice, 3 times, and finally he kills a boy on national TV, and the next thing you know, the country is burning down. We don't need a dumbass president repeating what segregationists said. You start looting, we start shooting. But the problem is some officers black and some people going to shoot back. And that's not good for our community either. I love and respect you all. I hope that we find a way out of it because I don't have the answers, but I do know we must plot. We must plan, we must strategize, organize, and mobilize. Thank you for allowing me some time to speak. I'd like to appreciate our chief for what she said on YouTube. I thought it was very bold to do. I'd like to appreciate our mayor for talking to us like a black mama and telling us to take our ass at home. And I'd like to thank my friend for convincing me to come here. And I'll defer to Joe Beasley now because he knows a hell of a lot.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just because I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my sassiness upset you? Don't take it so hard just because I laugh, as if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words, you can cut me with your lies, you can kill me with your hatefulness, but just like life, I rise. Does my sexiness offend you? Oh. Does it come as a surprise that I dance as if I have diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling and bearing in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave. And so, wow. There I go.
Sacred greeting in Islam, which the angels greet each other, a greeting that's sweeter than the honey, bigger than the sea, higher than the clouds, fairer than the moon. Let me greet you with this special greeting, my dear brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and mercy and the blessings of Allah be with you. For those of you who always show prejudice, you always judge the cover of me. My expression of my face doesn't mean that I agree with you. You don't know what's inside me. You tell me that I don't have the ability to say something or argue with you because of my skin color. Whenever you hold me back or say something that hurts, you don't know the flames or the fire that starts within. You think that having a different color makes you smart, but you don't know that I have the same heart and a brain to think. I always carry my heart with me, but you think that having a different color makes me forget my brain at home. When you show prejudice to me, you think that I could just throw it away like a piece of garbage. Every racist word you say doesn't vanish. It stays in my heart because of its sharp points. I want you to put my shoe on and see what it feels like. Your words make my heart
cry. In order for
cry.
you and me to devise some kind of method or strategy to offset some of the events or a repetition of the events that have taken place here in Los Angeles recently, we have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we're dealing in hate. We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you? And I, for one, as a Muslim, believe that the white man is intelligent enough. If he were made to realize how black people really feel and how fed up we are without that old compromising sweet talk. Stop sweet talking him. Tell him how you feel. Tell him what kind of hell you've been catching, and let him know that if he's not ready to clean his house up, if he's not ready to clean his house up, he shouldn't have a house. It should catch on fire and burn down.
Years, I'll be in that prison cell, you know, he's just putting me down, and you know, there's other better things or other criminals you guys should focus on instead of, you know, people of racial color that's not doing nothing, just hanging out with friends.
See, that's another thing. When you talk about a revolution, most people think violence, without realizing that the real content of any kind of revolutionary thrust lies in the principles and the goals that you're striving for, not in the way you reach them. On the other hand, because of the way this society is organized, because of the violence that exists on the surface everywhere, you have to expect that there are going to be such explosions. You have to expect things like that as reactions. If you are a black person and live in the black community all your life and walk out on the street every day seeing white policemen surrounding you, when I was living in Los Angeles, for instance, long before the situation in LA ever occurred, I was constantly stopped. No, the police didn't know who I was, but I was a black woman and I had a natural, and they, I suppose, thought that I might be a, quote, militant. And when you live under a situation like that constantly, and then you ask me, you know, whether I approve of violence. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all. Whether I approve of guns. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. Some very, very good friends of mine were killed by bombs that were planted by racists. I remember from the time I was very small, I remember the sounds of bombs exploding across the street, our house shaking. I remember my father having to have guns at his disposal at all times because of the fact that at any moment we might expect to be attacked. The man who was at that time in complete control of the city government, his name was Bull Connor, would often get on the radio and make statements like, niggers have moved into a white neighborhood, we better expect some bloodshed tonight. And sure enough, there would be bloodshed. After the 4 young girls who lived, one of them lived next door to me. I was very good friends with the sister of another one. My sister was very good friends with all 3 of them. My mother taught one of them in her class. My mother, in fact, when the bombing occurred, one of the mothers of one of the young girls called my mother and said, can you take me down to the church to pick up Carol? We heard about the bombing and I don't have my car. And they went down, and what did they find? They found limbs and heads strewn all over the place. And then after that, in my neighborhood, all of the men organized themselves into an armed patrol. They had to take their guns and patrol our community every night because they did not want that to happen again. I mean, that's why when someone asks me about violence, I just find it incredible. Because what it means is that the person who's asking that question has absolutely no idea what black people have gone through, what black people have experienced in this country since the time the first black person was kidnapped from the shores of Africa.
You say, as I've always said, and I will always continue to say, that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. I'm still convinced that non-violence is the most potent weapon available to oppress people in their struggle for freedom and justice. I feel that violence will only create more social problems than they will solve, that in a real sense it is impractical for the Negro to even think of mounting a violent revolution in the United States. So I will continue to condemn riots and continue to say to my brothers and sisters that this is not the way. Continue to affirm that there is another way. But at the same time, it is as necessary for me to be as vigorous in condemning the conditions which cause persons to feel that they must engage in riotous activities as it is for me to condemn riots. I think America must see that riots do not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. What is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. And so in a real sense, our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again. Social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot.
I'm going to bring in a man who was here from the start. This is Sedan Smith, and Sedan tells me he's actually the brother of the victim. He's promised not to use any profanity tonight on live television. Take me through what's going on right now.
Right now, you got a city riot going on because, once again, the police has failed to protect us like they say they was going to do. They failed to be here for the people like they say they sworn in to do. You know, and us as a community, we're not going to protect ourselves. But if we don't have anyone to protect us, then this is what you get. You know, you get riots. You got people out here going crazy. We losing loved ones every day to the people that's sworn in to protect us. It's other stuff that's going on out here, and you wonder why it's ISIS in America.
Sedan, certainly people upset here tonight, but we've got, innocent business owners who are now going up in flames. What's it going to take for you guys to be okay tonight and to stop this chaos?
It ain't me. It's not me. I'm going to let y'all know that now. It's not us guys neither. And I'm glad that y'all said that. It's not us. It's the police. This the madness that they spark up. This is what they encourage. This is what they provoke. This is what you get out of you taking a loved one from someone. This is what you get. You get a lot of people that's hurt, and they can't vent the right way. They can't no longer depend on the police to be here to protect us like they say they're going to do. So this is what you get. And no, it's not going to end today. I can't tell you it's going to end tomorrow. I don't know when it's going to end. But it's for y'all to start. We're not the ones that's killing us. Y'all killing us. We can't make it change if y'all don't change.
Is that whereas 40 years ago when I was born, the question of having to deal with what is unspoken by the subjugated, what is never said to the master, of having to deal with this reality was a very remote possibility. It was in no one's mind. When I was growing up, I was taught in American history books that Africa had no history, and neither did I. That I was a savage, about whom the less said the better, who had been saved by Europe and brought to America. And of course, I believed it. I didn't have much choice. Those are the only books there were. Everyone else seemed to agree. If you walk out of Harlem, ride out of Harlem, downtown, the world agrees. What you see is much bigger, cleaner, whiter, richer, safer than where you are They collect the garbage. People obviously can pay their life insurance. The children look happy, safe. You're not. And you go back home. And it would seem then, of course, that it's an act of God, that this is true, that you belong where white people have put you. It is only since the Second World War that there's been a counter-image in the world. And that image not come about through any legislation on the part of any American government, but through the fact that Africa was suddenly on the stage of the world, and Africans had to be dealt with in a way that had never been dealt with before. This gave an American Negro for the first time a sense of himself beyond a savage or a clown. It has created, and will create, a great many conundrums. One of the great things that the white world does not know, but I think I do know, is that black people are just like everybody else. One has used the myth of Negro and the myth of color to pretend and to assume that you are dealing essentially with something exotic, bizarre, and practically, according to human laws, unknown. Alas, that is not true. We are also mercenaries, dictators, murderers, liars. We are human too. What is crucial here is that unless we can manage to establish some kind of dialogue between those people whom I pretend have paid for the American dream and those other people who have not achieved it, we will be in terrible trouble. I want to say at the end, at the last, is that that is what concerns me most. We are sitting in this room, and we are all, at least we like to think we are, relatively civilized, and we can talk to each other at least on certain levels, so that we could walk out of here assuming that the measure of our enlightenment, or at least our politeness, has some effect on the world. It may not. I remember, for example, when the ex-Attorney General, Mr. Robert Kennedy, said that it was conceivable that in 40 years in America we might have a Negro president. And that sounded like a very emancipated statement, I suppose, to white people. They were not in Harlem when this statement was first heard, and did not hear, and possibly will never hear, the laughter and the bitterness and the scorn with which the statement was greeted. From the point of view of the man in the Harlem barbershop, Bobby Kennedy only got here yesterday. And now he's already on his way to the presidency. We've been here for 400 years, and now he tells us that maybe in 40 years, if you're good, we may let you become president. What is dangerous here is the turning away from anything any white American says. The reason for the political hesitation in spite of the Johnson landslide is the one that's been betrayed by American politicians for so long. And I am a grown man, and perhaps I can be reasoned with. I certainly hope I can be. But I don't know, and neither does Martin Luther King. None of us know how to deal with those other people whom the white world has so long ignored, who don't believe anything the white world says and don't entirely believe anything I or Martin say. And one can't blame them. You watch what has happened to them in less than 20 years. It seems to me that the city of New York, for example, this is my last point, which had Negroes in it for a very long time. If the city of New York were able, as it has indeed been able, in the last 15 years to reconstruct itself, tear down buildings and raise great new ones, downtown and for money, and has done nothing whatever except build housing projects in the ghetto for the Negroes. And of course the Negroes hate it. Presently the property does indeed deteriorate because the children cannot bear it. They want to get out of the ghetto. If the American pretensions were based on more solid, a more honest assessment of life and of themselves, it would not mean for Negroes, when someone says urban renewal, that Negroes simply are going to be thrown out into the streets, which is what it does mean now. This is not an act of God. We're dealing with a society made and ruled by men. If the American Negro had not been present in America, I am convinced that the history of the American labor movement would be much more edifying than it is. It is a terrible thing for an entire people to surrender to the notion that 1/9 of its population is beneath them. And until that moment, until the moment comes when we, the Americans, we, the American people, are able to accept the fact that I have to accept, for example, that my ancestors are both white and black, that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, and that I am not a ward of America. I am not an object of missionary charity. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment, there is scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it, by their very presence, will wreck it. And if that happens, it's a very grave moment for the West. Thank you.
Racism means basically like
a large part of a race feels that they're superior to another race. And so not only do they believe that, but they act on it.
Examples would be in class. Sometimes I'd be the only black kid, and we read a book like, I don't know, Huck Finn, and then there's that uncomfortable moment, the magic word come up, and people would look at you and you're like, what's his reaction, and things like that.
I was walking home from school with this one white girl, and we just gotten off the bus, and we were almost home, and there were these group of black kids that just got out of school. And she was like, oh, let's cross the street. There's a group of black kids. I don't want to run into them. And so she told me, which I don't even know why she would do that.
I used to wear a sweatband, like, just to reinforce my wrist. And I had a teacher come up to me and say, you should take it off because it looks gang affiliated.
I've been in situations where, I had to cross the street because I didn't want to scare the white lady that was walking.
It would get to the point where I would start to count how many times a woman would clutch her bag.
When I was 16, I was leaving my mom's house in my pajamas, which had snowmen on them, with my brother, and we were actually stopped by the police rather aggressively.
I've been stopped by the cops on my way between classes because we have two separate buildings, walking from one building to the other building, as my white students in the same class walk by me.
It's kind of upsetting because we live in a world where my mom has to be afraid when I walk outside from the people that are like meant to protect me. And I don't like when my mother feels like that. I love my mother. I want her to always be happy.
I walk tall, I keep my head up, try to be very articulate and polite. And so, of course, I was like, okay, I'm going to be fine because I act a certain way. And of course, that has absolutely nothing to do with it. The way people perceive you, is not up to you.
My parents taught me, cops are your friends, you're supposed to, they're here to protect you, but all I'm seeing is the opposite. So how can I not be afraid when I feel like I'm being hunted? When I feel like I'm there to fill a quota?
We are in a so-called free society, and as a black man, we literally don't feel free. We don't know what freedom is.
Every time we're killed, the first thing you see on the news is, criminal record, or something like that. So from the second the bullet hits us, already we're starting to be dehumanized.
With black people like myself, we don't get as many chances as they do. So you have to be aware and you have to watch out and you can't mess up.
This was an extremely emotionally taxing process for me in terms of coming to terms with maybe the nature of racism in my own life and in this country and in this world. And if you wait until somebody is 12, 13, and 14 to put that on them, it can be really difficult.
My dad, he's just like the honest one. He's like, listen, son, like there are things in this world, like you kind of have to watch out. He doesn't want me to live in fear, but he wants me to be aware.
I want people to know that I'm perfectly fine and I'm not gonna hurt anybody or do anything bad. I should be judged about like who I am and what kind of person I am.
My parents would tell me, especially my mom, she would tell me, you have to endure, you have to muscle through it. And this is no different. It's a part of being a person of color in America.
And there's a certain comfortability associated with that, because if I know that something is inevitable, then I know how to deal with it. Fortunately, I've had parents who have said, this is what you do.
Mom and Dad, I'll be fine because you did a good job raising me. You gave me all the resources and the time, the blood, sweat, and tears to make me a good man, an honorable man, and the foundation to survive in this country.
I want you to know that I will act in an appropriate manner and do everything that you told me to do, because I do love you, and I know that everything you say is not for a reason. And
when I first read of your assassination, I was already spent on grief. For Emmett, Amadou, Oscar, Eric, Trayvon, Renisha, and Mike. My well of mourning is running dry. I'm drawing on the coppers at the bottom of the wishing well. It's hard but necessary to be reminded so frequently of how expendable we, this strange fruit, truly are. And you left your house that day armed with potential, an arsenal of ambition, loaded with hope and ready to explode with its potential like fireworks across the Cleveland skyline, commemorating the new year you weren't allowed to enter. And I remember what it was like to be a 12-year-old black boy. It was hard enough to keep the mind clear, without being burdened with the knowing that from birth until death, you will live your life inside the eye of a crosshair, constantly shrinking yourself to fit into inhospitable places, governed by people who think they're doing you a favor by letting you breathe. And it's wrong. You had to adjust to life in a world where the humanity of blacks must be asserted daily. This is not the piece of justice Martin Luther King and his generation marched in solidarity for. And it's unfair that the media will question your skill at living cautiously, rather than your right to live happily, but will not probe why one of your murderers was a frontline officer, despite being deemed unfit for policing. The mainstream media will partake in the demonization of your character. You will be presented as the villain, rather than the victim of a modern-day lynching. The inquest into your murder will be nothing more than perfunctory, and the grand jury will decide that your death certificate was not signed when the 911 dispatcher asked the caller whether you were black or white, not once, but twice. They will not apportion accountability for your killers giving you just 2 seconds to react to their supposed calls of "put your hands up" before shooting you twice in the gut and forcing you to spend 4 of your final conscious minutes in the presence of your murderers, deprived of your right to first aid or the comfort of having your 14-year-old sister by your side as breath left your life. I'm sorry you never lived long enough to learn that the difference between childhood mischief and presumed juvenile criminality is not the difference between an authentic firearm and an air gun, but the difference between black skin and white skin. Dear Tammy, I promise to write down and speak up until the world and in years to come the history books speak of your name and the countless others in the same breath as genocide.
Yes!
5, 4, 3, put the gun to his head. 5, 4, 3, pull the trigger, and he's dead. I got my first kill today. When you're a soldier, you talk to the just silhouettes. They're not real people, just targets. Taught that there is no room for regret in the eyes of a soldier, I learned how to stomach death like a predator with live prey still clawing at the insides. But no one ever understands. The blood stains memories like generational trauma. ever understands that he was a soldier just like me. He had a family just like me. He was protecting his home just like me. It was either my life or his. I'm still not sure which one of us was the villain in the situation. My psychologist holds up ink blots. She asks me, "What do you see?" I tell her, I see a silhouette of the target, of the enemy, of a child. No, I see darkness. I see a soldier just following orders. I see a silhouette of a weapon that was never there to begin with. I see a soldier holding a semi-automatic to an unarmed 14-year-old on enemy lines. I see a soldier witnessing the aftermath of a war zone with a gun to his own temple. Post-traumatic self-destruction is just what happens when you finally feel the impact of the bullet that was never sent in your direction. Did you know that when the body is dead, that the bowels release is a scent that can't be washed away from your conscience easily as sin can? Someone please tell me, do all military dogs go to heaven? Do we still have a place among the angels that we murdered? Why does preserving the peace feel like home invasion? Have you ever seen a bullet make two men become soulless at the exact same time? 9mm bullet, lacerating through the jaw of a 14-year-old silhouette. You can still see the twitch in the body and make out cries and screams for his mother as he choked on his own blood, only guilty of being in the wrong place at the wrong time on the wrong side of a battlefield. When you deal with America, when do you have rights anyway? It is the duty of a soldier to serve and protect everyone in this country except for black, I mean silhouettes. They always tell you that there's a war going on, but they never teach you about the horrors of that war when you sign up here at the police academy.
I'm here today to talk about how I feel. And I feel like that we are treated differently than other people, and I don't like how we're treated, and just because of our color doesn't mean anything to me. I believe that
you're doing great. You're doing a great job.
And don't stop. Do not stop.
we are black people and we shouldn't have to feel like this. We shouldn't have to protest because y'all are treating us wrong. We do this because we need to and have rights.
Go ahead. Let her talk. Go ahead.
I've been born and raised in Charlotte, and I never felt this way till now. And I can't stand how we're treated. And it's a shame that our fathers and mothers are killed, and we can't even see them anymore.
That's right.
It's a shame that we have to go to the graveyard and bury them. And we have tears, and we shouldn't have tears. We need our fathers and mothers to be by our side.
They said I can't break, but they still choked him round his neck. He reached for his ID, but he was shot right in the chest. He said don't show me, but they still did, they felt the test. He was getting big, but he was strong, he did his best. He was just sleeping, but when he woke up he was shot. He was only 15, but he was punched right on the block. And tears are falling, blood is dripping all over this earth. Y'all are supposed to protect us, so why y'all killing us? So y'all are supposed to protect us, so why y'all killing us?
I just want to hear this again.